The Spy TV Network presents Spy Master Reads, classic novels read to you by SrikerSly.
Hard in Hightown, a Dragon Age novel written by Varric Tethras with Mary Kirby. For the second time in what was becoming a very long night, Donnen found himself knocking on a nobleman's door. In the still hours before dawn, the sky was turning gray around the edges. De Favre's estate was in the shadow of the Chantry. A lone soprano voice from the choir drifted in and out of Donnen's hearing with the wind. The steel of Donnen's gauntlets clanged against the door. Once, twice, no answer. He sighed, looking up at the dark windows of the mansion and feeling the weight of his armor and the hours he'd been awake press down on him. He was getting too old for this shit. Maybe he's out, Jevlin offered. He's hiding. Look up. Donnen pointed at the building. He's shuttered all the windows. There hasn't been a storm in months. He pounded on the door again louder. He didn't for a moment imagine that the Comte hadn't heard him knock before, or think it would help to get the door open. But the noise made him feel better. Should we get a backup or a ladder or something? Jevlin asked, peering up at the dark mansion. Donnen started to answer, and the door swung open. Come inside, quickly! A man rushed them inside and through the house. Every room was dark, and no moonlight made it through the shuttered windows. No candles flickered, and their way was lit only by a hooded lantern clenched in the hands of their host. He stopped once they reached a windowless inside room, where he closed and bolted the door behind him. Comte de Favre? Donnen guessed. The man nodded. In the dim lantern light, Donnen could see he was dressed in a gaudy brocade doublet that had gone out of style in Orlais a decade earlier, but had thrown on a chainmail shirt over it. He wore the helmet from an obviously ceremonial armor set, gilded wings sprouting from the sides like bat ears, and a voluminous plume of orange-dyed goose feathers fountaining out of the top. It sat slightly askew on his gray-haired head. I know why you are here, the Comte whispered. His narrow eyes were beady pinpricks in the lantern light, almost lost under his wild, bushy eyebrows. Dunwald. I hear you were the last man to see him alive, your lordship. Donnen's voice was carefully flat. Did you kill him? This is bigger than murder. The Comte's eyes flickered to the door, his voice a barely audible hiss. Dunwald drew the attention of great powers. When dragons do battle, guardsmen, mortal men can only take cover. He clutched at his chain shirt with one hand, and in a shaking voice added, Drop the gaze. Don't draw their gaze. Great powers? Jevlin asked, rolling his eyes. Really? Which ones are those exactly? Shh! The Comte lunged, pinning the recruit against the wall and clapped his hand over Jevlin's mouth, eyes wide. With the other hand, he held the lantern up by Jevlin's head, trying to shine the light into the corners and shadows. They are always watching and listening. Donnen pulled the nobleman off his startled partner. If you know who stabbed the magistrate, I suggest you tell us, he said in a tone of such extraordinary doubtfulness that it made a roach scurrying in the corner flee the scene in shame. They come, de Favre whispered, barely audible, from across the sea. You must not stand between them and what they seek, guardsman. The Comte grabbed the wide collar of Donnen's breastplate and peered desperately into the guardsman's face. They will drown the city in blood to find it. We're not actually listening to this, are we? Jevlin muttered. Comte de Favre. Donnen spoke each word slowly and with great care, not so the deranged old nobleman would understand, but as an exercise in keeping his temper. He detached the man's clammy hand from his armor. I need you to come to the Viscount's keep and give a statement to my captain about this concern of yours." "No!" The Comte recoiled, flailing his lantern at the shadows as if trying to keep the darkness at bay. "They already know. They know I found the prize. I'm next, you see. They'll come for me next." He threw back the bolt and opened the door behind Donnen. "Go! Go! It may already be too late." He shoved both guards out of the tiny room and slammed the door. Donnen heard the scratching of the bolt being fastened again. And in the pitch blackness of the hallway, Jevlin cleared his throat. So, how do we find our way out of here?" Donnen sighed, fumbled for the flint he carried in his belt, swore once under his breath as he blindly felt for the sconce in the dark, then several more times for good measure as he struggled to bring the wick and the flint together. The resulting candle flame barely punctured the gloom and almost made the house seem darker. He studied the heavy door for a moment, turned to his partner. "Well, kid, you can get some shut-eye. You're not going to want to see what comes next."
We hope you enjoyed this chapter. See you next time.